Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at B2B World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the very important factors concerning Pakistan, and of course with reference to what has been going on internationally as well in terms of terrorist activities and the involvement of a particular state, namely India. This is something that we've been seeing, of course, in Pakistan and have been raising voice against for quite a long time, but now perhaps more and more members of the international community are coming to realize and are coming to the same conclusion that this is something that needs our serious attention. First, of course, there was the incident that happened in Canada, and then the thwarting of an attempt in the United States. Of course, any attack on any citizen of a country is an attack on that country's sovereignty, and this is why the matter is being taken very, very seriously. We also know that the State Department spokesperson has talked about how serious this is and how senior levels of the officers have been engaged, and this is something that is being talked about and being highlighted with the senior officials of the Indian government as well, without clarifying who it is that they are speaking to, and has also claimed that they are going to be waiting for the results of India's own investigation, something that they have declared they will be conducting. And so after that, there is going to be the next step, and the outcome of which is going to be decided post the results of that investigation. At the same time, responding to a question, the State Department spokesperson has also clarified that they are also in conversation with the Canadian authorities and have also urged the Indian counterparts to take their investigation very seriously and to cooperate with the Canadian authorities as well. Something that has been reportedly shared is not being happening at the moment. And so this is something that we're going to explore in our show in terms of what this means, especially in terms of relations between India and the United States and other countries, and then specifically for investigations that are being carried out, what exactly is going to be the role that the State Department or the US government is going to be playing with regards to making sure that it is in fact a fair investigation that is taking place, and how much of the fact that the state's own involvement exists in the matter is going to be explored and then of course countered. So this is something we're going to be taking a look at in our first segment of the show today. In our next one, we're going to be taking a look at what is happening at home, especially with regards to the upcoming general elections in the country, which again, unfortunately, are seeing a lot of rumors being spread about, and something that has been reiterated by the caretaker setup, by the Election Commission of Pakistan, claiming that there is no delay, and also most recently by the Information Minister, who has clarified that the elections will be happening on time, and that whatever reports are coming in regarding any delay in the elections are false. So we're going to be taking a look at this particular issue with further focus in terms of what really is going on, why such reports are being circulated, and what needs to be done about them, and also what reassurances do we already have, especially when we talk about the 8th of February, that this is the date that we are going to be seeing general elections in the country, and ruling out the possibility of any other option. That is going to be our focus in the next segment of the show today. For this and more in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Raja Faisal, and we've been joined online by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi, and we've also been joined by our guest, Mr. k.Baluch, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much for joining us and being part of the discussion. And Ambassador Saab, let me start with you in terms of what has been going on, especially with regards to the way that we have seen the involvement of countries like the United States and Canada, and the public announcements that have been made with regards to the involvement of the Indian state with regards to activities in other countries, something Pakistan, of course, has highlighted previously. But what do you see in the momentum now, or in the way that this issue is being raised now internationally, that you think is fundamentally different from what it has been before, and whether or not this will mark a shift in the way that India is perceived?
See now, these two allegations. One, actually, the murder took place in Canada of one of the Sikh activist, Mr. Hardeep Singh Najjar, in front of a Gurdwara. And second incident involves an attempt on life of Mr. Gurpatwar Singh Pannu, who again a Sikh activist. And in both the cases, the host governments where these incidents took place, that is Canadian government And in case of Mr. Panun, it was the US government, which has, uh, according to them, credible evidence to suggest that perhaps the Indian government officials or a agency or institution was involved in these two unlawful activities. So it has actually legal, diplomatic, and political aspects. So I think it obviously requires a long discussion and discourse. Yet, I'll try to briefly touch upon the diplomatic and political aspect because legal, since we do not have the legal input from them as to what level of evidence, what quality of evidence is there, what kind of are actual charges against them. For sure, that is there because in case of Canada, no less than the Prime Minister of Canada on the floor of the House had uh, announced this murder of the Sikh activist and a possible link of some Indian government official. And in case of the attempt of Mr. Najjar, the State Department spokesperson has said. So I think it means both the governments do have very credible evidence, so to say, and also that in both the cases, I think what they call it the Five Eyes, those five countries, they kind of collaborate in terms of their intelligence gathering. So I think it's quite a in terms of evidence, seems that it is quite credible evidence. Now coming over to the diplomatic and to the political sort of aspects of the case. Diplomatically, we have seen that India overreacted in case of Canada. It expelled Canadian diplomats. And in turn, of course, Canada had to perforce to also expel them. Not only that, India went to the extent of showing the bravado of suspending the visa for the Canadian nationals. So, kind of, they try to overplay the confidence, but it did not work out. But when the second incident took place in the US, obviously they were on the back foot. They were on the defensive. And I think their Foreign Office spokesman said that that is not the policy of the Indian government. So they did not deny the function or the role of some functionary, Indian government functionary, yet they said that is, and they kind of distanced itself from that. And there was no overreaction to what they did in case of Canada, that they would probably hush up by overreacting. So I think that did not work. Now, in this, whether how far US can go in terms of course, the indictment has been, I think there has been indictment in one of the courts in the US of somebody who was connected to the official, whose official's name has not been announced or has been made public, but it appears that the US judicial system will take place. So I think at the diplomatic level, I think Indian reaction in case of Canada was overreaction, while in case of the US, I think it knows that it has been caught now one after the other on a very sure grounds. So they were kind of on the defensive. They were trying to limit the damage on their bilateral relations with the US. Coming to the political, I think as far as the political sort of its implications for India-US relations, probably that would not materially change. Yeah, obviously it does impact the image of India as a some kind of a champion of human rights, champion of democracy, and so on, so on. Although it never be perceived as a champion of human rights, but yet a self-assumed progressive democracy which take care of the rule of law and so on and so forth. And of course, it does. I think joins the chorus when it says that we want an international order which is rule based and so on and so forth. So I think the image of India has been really impacted very badly in the international opinion and in the international media. So I think it has now, and probably reportedly, it has for the time being, it's institution which carries out these institutions have apparently suspended all the overseas operations. But it appears that they were operating all over the world. In fact, I was just looking at some of the reports. This is not something new they're doing. Since the 5th of August 2019, since they revoke the special status of Kashmir, 612 extrajudicial killings have taken place in the Indian occupied Kashmir. And only in 1 year, about over 98 extrajudicial killings took place. So I think India is using extrajudicial killing and terror as an instrument of their policy. So this needs to be really addressed by the international media. And of course, Pakistan is impacted by that because there were reports of some people being killed in the same mysterious way, which and in the press, whatever I've seen, that there were kind of references to possible Indian institutions or Indian state their own, some concerned agencies' involvement in those killings. So I think this is a very serious matter and needs to be addressed. Yes, please.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Saab, I just want to explore a little bit more about what you talked about in terms of legal consequences. And I understand that you talked about having substantial evidence and the way that this may proceed further. But I want to also understand with a bit more clarity, especially in terms of in case state-sponsored terrorism is established with any state, or if there is involvement of the government authorities in place at the moment of any country, in terrorist activities in another country, what legal avenues or actions are present in terms of the head of the states, the people involved in the government, and the consequences that await them? How exactly is this established, and then what procedures are follow, and what action can possibly be taken?
See, as far as the repercussions for India, I think there has been there are precedences where the states have been designated by the UN and some other authorities as the states, rogue states. There is kind of evidence to suggest that perhaps such states can be termed in the public parlance as rogue states. But if the evidence is refutable, and if there's a whole pattern and they are able to establish that it was a state policy, then there is a designation called states sponsors of state terrorism. So India can fall into that category, and if really these two cases proceed the way, if they proceed with full, with complete evidence and the proper procedure, and if they are able to trace back the evidence up to some personality in the Indian government, so one would not be surprised that that person can be sanctioned. We don't know who that person would be, at what level the permission to carry out these extrajudicial killings took place. But if the evidence does go back and they are able to trace, I think there is a possibility that some of the senior people in the Indian government can be designated as the sponsors of terrorism. So that is not out of the possibility, but obviously politics and other things come in, so we don't know how far US or how far Canada can go in tracing back the entire process or entire decision making or the planning of these extrajudicial killings. Yes, please.
Right, absolutely. Farrukh, we've also seen that the State Department has said that they're going to wait for the investigation by Indian authorities to be completed and see the outcome of that and wait for the results and see what comes about. But I want to understand how much can be expected from the investigation that India is going to conduct into its own allegations and in the involvement of its own decision makers, if there is that case, especially given the fact that they understand the kind of consequences that are involved. And how do we then ensure that whatever results are actually put forward to the United States, that they will be meticulous and they will be taken seriously?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that while we are going to talk about the possible consequences or course of an investigation, as per the State Department, there were 2 or 3 moving parts that were pointed out. One, in the US, this attempt, because it took place there, DOJ is busy building a case. Then Indian authorities have been asked to carry out their investigation. They have committed to that. Of course, there must be some pressure, otherwise, why would they concede that ground? Similarly, when it comes to Canada, they are simultaneously, in contact with Canadian authorities, which are conducting another moving part of the equation, that is investigation in Canada. And then they are asking Indian authorities to actually carry out their domestic investigation as well. What does it tell you? It tells you that India wouldn't have agreed to any kind of momentum or movement on this matter had there not been, enough evidence and enough diplomatic pressure from the U.S. Actually, Five Eyes. If you have seen when Canada's situation or story actually broke, and Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, actually stated on the floor of the House. At that time, we saw India's this so-called media agency called ANI was trying to hound other countries' officials as well, including Australia's, to comment on the matter. But they refused to comment, and they wouldn't engage with this kind of agencies or media agencies. So right now, what we know is there's enough evidence to compel the U.S. and Canada to actually not only state it publicly, but pressure India to cooperate in the investigation as well. That is one aspect. Now we have to ask some deeper, bigger questions, Sana, because when Canadian authorities actually made that statement, at that time also I had actually pointed out that this time they seem to have annoyed their best cheerleaders. The Western intelligence agencies for past 20 years have been building a case that India should be their core ally, and they have been actually pushing this narrative as well. But when you actually violate the sanctity or violate the sovereignty of Five Eyes countries, and their intelligence is also annoyed by the matter, then it becomes a different case. The way one case has succeeded another would actually tell you that it is essentially a warning shot. What can that mean? It can mean that similar kind of acts were happening in the past as well, but because one country took a stand and India actually mishandled it, other countries have actually started piling on as well. That would also mean that these cases are not the first. There must be other cases that have taken place, and although the Canadian, Indian, American, or for that matter, but British, Australian, or New Zealander authorities would not have actually taken a stance. Why would that be? This time, India attacked a Sikh leader in Canada, and Sikh community is pretty, integrated into their political structure. Before that, what I would believe why India would actually feel this much emboldened would be because in the name of war and terror, they kept on doing similar kind of thing. But at that time, the people who were being hunted down were essentially Muslims, or for that matter, Kashmiri, or in some way or the other, India actually could pin some kind of blame on them. With that kind of a situation in mind, you would think that India has actually crossed the line, which actually is, tantamount to actually burning boats. And after this, what happens is gradually, the consequences are not going to dawn on us overnight, but one by one, we are going to see a pushback, and we are going to see, these people being burnt out. India's influence will gradually be compromised, and all these countries and their intelligence agencies will stop cooperating with India, that means we will see more cases in coming days, and perhaps it will be difficult for India to extricate itself from those cases.
Right, absolutely.
Uh,
Faisal, given what we're discussing, especially with reference to how India is going to react and how this is going to then impact its relations with other countries, particularly when we talk about the involvement of intelligence agencies and then also state-sponsored terrorism. I understand that this may point towards a sort of different trajectory that India might see. But again, as what we've seen in the past and how we've seen also being discussed at the moment, there always remains the possibility that despite whatever has happened, it may be something that would be settled under the table and not something which is going to come out in the open or will have consequences proportionate to what has happened, at least not something in a transparent manner. Do you think that potentially the kind of geopolitical situation that we see India in will still be able to counter all that is possible in terms of the gravity of the situation?
Sana, looking at the whole picture, what I see is that India is, of course, in trouble. If we look at American position and the Canadian position, we are talking about this factor that, of course, the Sikh community out there, they are very influential, and then they are politically intact with the society in there. So, of course, they are empowered enough to, of course, force India into it, and both of the countries, that is why they are doing it. There is another very important reason behind it. That is that if they don't do it, then of course the Khalistan movement's leadership, it can go to International Court of Justice as well against India. And of course the people who, one of them got murdered and the other one was going to be attempted for, and both, of course, there are evidences, that is why their cases are being probed. So it can be considered that that pressure is there too. Earlier, Farrukh highlighted an excellent point, and that is that similar sort of cases, they have taken place in past as well. Nobody talked about it before because at that time, of course, the foundations were being laid by the Western countries and India as well to have a sort of alliance amongst them. But if we look at the Ukraine crisis, in Ukraine crisis, whatever was expected by India, it was not delivered. And India, of course, when it comes to Ukraine crisis, it portrayed itself as neutral, and it did not want to play any role in the favor of the Western countries when it comes to, of course, distancing itself with an ally like Russia. Of course, majority of the procurements, defense procurements, if we talk about, India procures from Russia, and India relies on Russia when it comes to defense products. So Americans and the Western countries, they wanted India at that time to make or break and to decide for itself where does it stand, and India did not do it at that time. And I think that is when the problems for India had started. And of course, the series of events, if the one we are looking at now, they have been taking place at that time. And of course, I'm pretty much sure that the eye on India was opened at that time. Before that, it was shut for reasons, and them reasons are not being considered now. And of course, it is bad time for India in coming days. But importantly, Sana, what I'm trying to say is, of course, if Canada and America don't do it, then International Court of Justice, the option for the political movement, Khalistani movement, it is always there, because it's a matter of their leader. Their leader was obviously going to be executed, and he was being planned for being executed, and one of the leader was already executed. And by the way, this is something which was taking place in the Western countries. What about the domestic affairs of India? I mean, it is a known fact that in India it is so easy for research and analysis wing to murder anyone in India, especially related to Khalistan movement. What we have been seeing, that the pattern was, the modus operandi which was applied was that there are different gangs in there. Like, I would give one of such example of a singer called Moosewala. Last year he got executed. He got executed by the Indian state. Why did they do it? Because he was singing in the favor of Khalistan movement, and he was being followed by the youth of the Khalistani movement. And what they did was that there are two groups. One of them is Lawrence Bishnoi group, and the other one is Goldie Brar group. Both of them, they are gangs, and what they portray is that the slain man was actually associated with one of the gangs, and as he was associated with one of the gangs, the other gang people, they murdered him. And that is what they said at that time. And guess what? Both of the leaderships of these both gangs, they are enjoying themselves in the Indian jails. So this is the modus operandi. What they're doing is they're just portraying it as if it was a gang war in India, and that is how somebody got murdered. But this is not the only case. Case after case in India, case after case in India, in which they portray as if it was a gang war and they got murdered. Since 1984, we know Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala got murdered the same way, and of course, his followers, they have been facing the same brute force. The state machinery was being utilized against the Sikhs, and the way they have been brutalized, and that is when they were forced to go to the Western countries. And now when they are in the Western countries, now they are of course chasing them there. So I think things are very odd for India in coming days, and diplomatically, India would be facing a lot.
Right. Ambassador Saab, I also want to establish the link between what Faisal suggested also in terms of what is going on within India. And we all understand that there are so many human rights violations taking place, and this is of course not just with relation to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also minorities such as Sikhs and Christians within India as well, and especially with regards to targeting those involved in the Khalistan movement. And I want to then understand whether or not you think the momentum that is taking place internationally with such incidents like that in the US and Canada are going to have any impact on what is going on within India, or vice versa, in terms of the way that the voices who are supporting these movements who are against the state at the moment will have influence over how the international players are reacting and making decisions.
See, India actually has been trying to portray itself as the emerging global, regional and global power. And perhaps it assumed a certain immunity that if it engages itself in such extrajudicial killings in the other countries, it will not be caught, or even within its own territory. Not keeping in mind that the world is now much more sensitive. The social media, the electronic media, but I think they were blinded by the way they were kind of in the wake of kind of new policy of the West, or what they call pivot to the East. India assumed that now strategically India is so vital for the Western country in terms of confronting or neutralizing China as a countervailing force, that they thought that perhaps they will not be held accountable, and that they will have some kind of accountability and immunity from there, and there will be no accountability. But that was not the case, number one. Number two, I think in terms of Sikhs, what happens is that Sikhs has a very, very large diaspora in most of the Western countries, and they are very well organized. They are very well met and very influential, and very kind of they are represented in the corporate sector in the US, not only in the US but most of the Western countries. So I think they, in a way, targeted the wrong community. Of course, when they were the Muslim community or the Kashmir community was a target, there was kind of a hush-hush everywhere. But it appears that there will be no more hush-hush. So I think what I see is that India will probably retreat and would try to make amends with the Western countries, because probably it would try to not compromise its emerging alliances with the Western countries. That is where, because it has moved pretty far, being a Quad member, being part of the I2U2 and all those acronyms that come across. But definitely, I agree with that the perception and the image of India as a reliable partner would be dented by this very thing. So I think India will probably have to realign itself in terms of what it does with the human rights, what it does with the dissent. But there are no indications. Even yesterday, there was a cold-blooded murder of Christians in Manipur. And imagine the central government of India has not moved. Nobody except for Ahmad Shah, no, the Prime Minister has not so far visited Manipur, despite the fact that hundreds of people have been killed on both the sides, but more of Christians. Their villages have been destroyed. Their churches have been burnt away. The girls have been, and the women have been raped there. So I think India internally is in a big turmoil, despite the fact that they build a very beautiful image outside because of the media manipulation within the country and outside. But definitely, India has big challenges in terms of the way it is governing, and especially with regard to the rights of the minorities. I think India, if it does not set its house in order, India has big troubles.
Right, but Ambassador Saab, I also want to understand how much of a problem is that for countries such as the US and Canada and the international community. What goes on inside India? Is that anybody's problem outside of India?
Sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
My question is, whatever goes on inside India, is that of relevance to the countries such as the United States and Canada? Does it matter to them what goes on within the country? Whatever is going on inside, will it have an impact or will it make a difference to those outside? And how much are they even concerned about it?
Yeah, definitely. See why? Because that is what they were trying to project, the BJP government, that we are all in control. We are a model of good governance. We are a very, very developing country. I mean, like fast-growing country, the fastest-growing economy. Obviously, and that their money is safe. But all that is myth. That all is propaganda. That will come out when all these insurgencies, all these killings, all these violations of the human rights, they all are, when they come out in the open, definitely the investors, the people who want to put a bet on India. I mean, the issue was that they were trying to bet on India as the emerging power in South Asia and ultimately globally, and a countervailing force to China. But if internally India has so much of dissent that there are so many centripetal forces which will kind of divide India within itself, obviously that much of projection of their diplomatic and political clout does decrease, because after all, foreign policy of any country or foreign weight of any country outside is what they are internally. So ultimately, these insurgencies, these dissent within the country, or the violation of the human rights of the minorities, is going to tell upon the internal stability and political stability of India, and ultimately the economy of India. Either they still are suppressing and using brute force, the way we see it in Israel. So I think India probably cannot expect that it will continue to violate the rights of the minorities within their country and nobody will bother. No, that is probably not possible, because the Western world. I mean, I won't go to specific that what Canada and how US will react, but I think the international opinion has an impact. International law has certain at least moral weight to be counter to such violation of the human rights. So I think India either will have to put its house in order, or will have to face the consequences of violation of human rights within its own
Right.
country or outside in any other country. Yes, please.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. G.R. Baloch, for joining us and being part of the discussion and sharing your views. Of course, in terms of what has happened so far and what is going to transpire, there is a lot that remains to be seen in terms of the way that we're going to be seeing, particularly the investigation involved, and then the way that countries such as the US and Canada will react. But we really hope that whatever it is that is being talked about actually comes to the forefront, and there is something done about it in terms of what Pakistan itself has been highlighting for so long, and people have been suffering for so long as well. But that is it from our first segment. We're now going to be moving on to our next one, focusing on what is going on within Pakistan, particularly in the political arena, especially with regards to rumors circulating yet again about a delay in elections. We have seen that a number of authorities have reiterated again and again that there is going to be no delay, that elections are timely, but it seems strange that that is even necessary to be repeated. Farrukh, we've also seen the finance division also release 17.4 billion to the ECP in addition to the previous 10. We've seen the caretaker prime minister say that there will be no delay. The ECP is stressing upon that. We have most recently the information minister also speaking about that. And yet, whenever we still talk about elections, there seems to be a possibility of delay still kept in the conversation. I want to understand why that is, and why is it that we keep on hearing from various authorities that there will be no delay. Why is it that they feel the need to say that?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. I think that would be because many of the very influential and powerful pundits have already started insinuating that elections are going to be delayed. This is the game people play. They have been playing it for quite some time. It used to happen in the past as well. Sometimes it would stick, sometimes it wouldn't. But now, if, for example, if things start functioning properly, and if there's hardly anything to criticize, what do you think the pundits will do? They will be out of job. So many of these geniuses have actually come up with this idea. I'm sure that they must be in a drawing room or another where discussion was going on that election might have this consequence or that consequence, and they surmised that there is going to be some kind of delay in the election. And out of that, we started seeing all these speculative reports, insinuations, vlogs, and then columns as well, where various people actually kept on recommending or suggesting that there is going to be some kind of delay, and then, of course, building the whole argument, on this, and they have then forwarded many conspiracy theories. But I think that it is the government is within its rights to actually point out that elections are going to take place in time. And if you think that it is government being government, and the government or authorities essentially have to quash these rumors, and they have to do it in spite of themselves, then let me also remind you that this matter is a serious one, because the day when Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Isa actually, heard the case regarding a holding of elections, and that day Election Commission came up with a date also. At that time also, he also instructed, authorities to ensure that anybody who challenges or who claims that elections are not going to take place in time, they should see the consequences of law. So now I think that that is something that might happen in coming days, maybe not very sternly, perhaps proverbial slap on the wrist kind of situation. But there are going to be reminders, and the government and authorities will have to do it, because remember, whenever you try to create an environment of instability, especially based on uncertainty or speculation, then the economic toll is great. Stock market can actually have jitters. Similarly, your dollar rate, your rupee rate, your ability to fulfill your policy promises all suffer. So I think that speculators will keep on speculating. Whether there is any substance to these rumors, I don't think there is any. Why would everybody from the state or government go out of their way to actually state it categorically that elections are going to take place at time if there was
Right.
even an iota of doubt in their minds that this will not happen?
Right, absolutely. Faisal, I understand that this is being said by all the decision makers and authorities, and so many assurances have already been given. But for particular issues that are being raised, such as that of finances and resources for the ECB that was raised earlier, of course, has been put to bed now by the release of money by the finance division. But is there any such angle that is still left open and is not yet closed, leaving the possibility of people just making up these speculations? Is there anything that can possibly be used to spill another rumor?
You know, Sana, if we look at obviously the current situation, the matter is just being highlighted because of you know, a few of the leaders I won't like to name for certain reasons. They have been highlighting that, of course, there are certain part of Pakistan where war on terror is being fought. And of course, the terrorism, the wave of terrorism is quite hot out there. So that is why they believe that the elections might get delayed, and that is why we are seeing a few of the pundits, they claiming that you know, state would of course sort of extend the dates or something like that. This is not the case. I mean, it is good that our interim information minister, he has reiterated the facts, and the facts are that the election date was given of 8th of February, and the 8th of February, he categorically said 8th of February, Thursday, is going to be the day when of course the you know, elections would take place. And it is true that all of the you know, required aspects of an election, they are being completed one by one. We must understand that state wants an election, and state has an interim government installed that is there to of course have the election, and them elections are going to take place in February on 8th, on Thursday. And all of these analysts, they can talk about it because they have to have something to talk about it. And we know, obviously, you know, Farrukh has mentioned that somehow they have to you know, talk about it, because that is how they have been doing in past, and they keep on doing it. But facts are facts, and election is the way forward, and election will take place in time, as you know, it was of course initially said by the Supreme Court as well. Chief Justice of Pakistan, he said it, Supreme Court said it, everyone says it. We don't care what analysts say it, but of course February the 8th is the election date.
All right, and we really hope that is, of course, the case. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining the debate as always. And we really hope that we don't see a lot more controversy being spread around elections in Pakistan. Certainly, Pakistan could do well with more certainty and less uncertainty in the country, with political and economic progress going in the right direction. We want that to be sustainable, and we want to see long-term benefits coming out of it. So let's hope that it is, as Faisal said, 8th of February, the election date. But that's it from the debate at the moment. We'll come back tomorrow with more news from around the world and in Pakistan. Stay tuned.